Hi everyone, we welcome you all to this Week Tech Tuesday webinar on Configure CDGC scanners with Microsoft SSIS, SSRS and SQL Server stored procedures. Today's speakers are Srinivasa and Punit, who are Principal Solutions Architects. Before we start the session, let's go through some of the housekeeping tips. The webinar is for 1 hour that includes 15 minutes Q&A. You can post your queries in Q&A box which will be answered at the end of the presentation. All participants will be muted during the presentation. The session will be recorded and it will be available on our InfoSupport YouTube channel and Success Portal where you will be able to download the slide deck. Please feel free to submit your suggestion or feedback for the session in the post-webinar survey. The Success Portal is a microlearning platform that offers free, unlimited learning to all the registered users. This feature-rich platform helps you learn and adopt to Informatica products better. The following are few important links that you can go over later. This will help you in your product adoption journey with Informatica. Over to you, Srinivasa and Punit. Thank you.
Here is the agenda for today's webinar. We'll go through overview of Metadata Command Centre, which is part of Cloud Data Governance and Catalog ecosystem, and IDMC as a overall platform. We'll focus on SQL Server stored procedure configuration, SQL Server integration service and reporting service configuration, demo and question and answers. IDMC has various applications. The data governance and catalog is focused on end user consumption. All users who are contributors, collaborators, and consumers will be on this app. Create, update, delete, view all our activities are managed from this application. The Metadata Command Center, which is also called as MCC, focused on admin activities for CDGC. All admin activities and definition of data classifications and adding of new resources, configuring data discovery, intelligent glossary association, will happen in this particular app. The administrator app is focused on admin activities like users and user group creations, defining agents and runtime environments, creating technical connections, etc. The CDGC Secure Agent based execution has Secure Agent deployed on the customer environment, like which has access to this data sources. It can be cloud or on-premise. And once the MCC is configured and the job is triggered, it extracts the metadata or depending on whether the profiling is selected or not. So that will get extracted as well and goes through an ingestion process, discovery process, and gets stored in the CDGC repositories. The CDGC serverless execution doesn't need a secure agent to be available on the customer's environment. Hence, it will be more of direct connection from the IDMC platform. And the extraction and profiling happens inside the serverless cluster and goes through an ingestion, discovery, and stores in the CDGC repositories in the Informatica IDMC platform itself. Refer to PAM as only supported sources are available for serverless execution, which is the product availability metrics. So let's look into SQL Server stored procedures. These are the prerequisites. Ensure that the sufficient license is available that is listed here. The default port is 1433 and that needs to be accessible through the secure agent that is deployed that can connect to this particular database environment. And the service account that is being used needs to have sufficient permissions that are listed here. We have also attached the configuration guide for further details if you need further information on the service account setup. Ensure the secure agent is deployed as close to the source as possible to avoid latency issues. It can be hosted on cloud and you can connect to on-premise as well if the port and firewall are enabled to communicate. Here is a sample example of the configuration of SQL Server database. You can see the metadata source type is SQL Server that is connected here. The connection information is coming from the administrator application that has sufficient privileges that we just went through in the prerequisites. Ensure the service account has all the privileges listed because majority of our learnings has been that the privileges are missing, hence that's time consuming activity. Hence ensure like you before coming to the application itself, you have sufficient privileges assigned to the service account. In the configuration parameters, select the process programmable objects to yes. This ensures that if you have stored procedures, that will be scanned as well. And this is a result after loading the metadata extraction. Here you can see all the metrics of what got extracted, and all the results can be viewed in data governance and catalog application. This is only from the MCC perspective. You'll be able to see the result and go through the logs and if there is any issues with that. Let's move into SQL Server integration service configuration. If you have multiple logical applications, especially like if you have treasury or accounting or etc., any other applications that has the SQL Server integration service, so try to split into all these logical applications and create separate configurations for these areas. There are two options that you can choose. You can choose a file-based option. If you store the packages in a database, export those files together with the corresponding DTS config, connection manager, and param files. You export the input files to the server where you previously installed Secure Agent with the DTUtil utility. You get this utility during the Microsoft SQL Server installation. If you store the packages as files in DTSX format, export the input files from the file system. Another approach is to use the SSIS DB, which is a preferred approach. If SSDB has the packages deployed, catalog scanners can connect to extract DTSX connection management parameters files. If you need specific permission list, refer to this link here, which points to the configuration guide. Here is a sample configuration here. You can see the metadata source type is selected as SQL Server integration service. And the SSIS reader module is set to SSIS DB, and ensure that you are having sufficient permission. Very important one before coming to the application and configuring. And this is an example for the file-based approach where you can select the file option and provide the directory where the exported files using the DTUtil utility or other approach that was mentioned. Ensure that you have Secure Agent has access to that particular path. And here is a monitoring and result here, which will show all the objects that have been extracted. To view the objects, you need to go into data governance and catalog view under the catalog section. For all the lineage to be displayed, the connection assignment needs to be done and establish the lineage links. Hence, you can see that the SSIS jobs that are here has been mapped to an endpoint into SQL Server. It can be any database that SQL Server integration service is pointing to, and the job status is completed here. So ensure that this is done in order to see the lineage here. Otherwise, you will see the reference objects, which is kind of an illusion created for an actual object. Hence, it needs to be resolved to an actual object. Let's move on to SQL Server reporting service configuration. Similar approach where you can split into logical applications applies here as well. Now, you need to have the sufficient permission that is listed over here with file reader mode or web service reader mode option. And the preferred approach is web service reader mode, which with sufficient permission listed here. The connection assignment is critical in order to get the lineage. That is similar approach that we discussed on SSIS. Here is an example for SSRS server config manager where it shows the domain and service account, and that can be used for extracting using the utility that is provided as part of the Secure Agent, and use the credentials here and include the filters or exclude filters with a particular folder or reports, and the target directory which is accessible to the Secure Agent can be provided here. Here is an example of how to execute the exporter utility with the JSON file to an XML. And here is an example of how to configure in MCC, where the metadata source type is selected to SSRS, the reader mode is files, and the corresponding XML files are selected. Ensure you have the extension of XML files. It's important to extract the required reports into CDGC. Using the web service approach, you have to switch to the web service mode. SSRS reader mode is set to web service. The web service URL is provided. The domain only needs to be updated. Rest all the syntax, please have it with as per the syntax here. And the domain, as we saw in the SSRS configuration manager, needs to be the same as here, and the credentials with appropriate permissions required. Here are some best practices. SSIS scanner configuration. SSIS DB reader is preferred approach because it directly connects to the database. There is no file interaction needed, which reduces the maintenance effort on an ongoing basis. SSRS scanner configuration ensure the URL is following the syntax. The filter is preferred where you apply appropriate filters, then you can start small and expand later. Access and permission, as we mentioned, like majority of the time is spent in getting appropriate access requests and permissions to establish connection. Ensure the prerequisites are met before you try to configure in MCC. Once the successful scan is done and the metadata is extracted, profiling is completed, ensure to add sufficient enrichments, tagging, reviews, certification, providing easier navigation and to consume for end users. All right, let's move on to the demo, handing it over to Puneet. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Srini, for covering the first half of the presentation. And now we can get started with the demo for the stored procedure. So as everybody can see, I'm on my Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. And in that, I have created a very simple table as employee under the human resources schema. So this table essentially contains all the columns specific to the employee database. And once it is created, I have created a very simple stored procedure, sp_cst_employee, which is inserting the values from employee table to employees_cst_sp under the DBO schema. So once this stored procedure has been created and saved and executed, you will see this available under the programmability stored procedures, and under that you will see the stored procedure saved. So once this is saved, we can go back to our consoles for creating the connections and the sources. So now, before we get there, the first important part to be taken care is creation of the secure agent, which is essentially a runtime environment for the execution of the source. So here for this demo particularly, I have set up a secure agent on my desktop itself, which is fine for lab or for demo purposes, but make sure you don't do this for your production environments, because we need the secure agent up and running and have sufficient resources, especially for the production lanes 24/7. So once the secure agent has been set up and is up and running, the next part is we can check for the connection creation. So here I have, under the administrator microservice, I have created a connection which is a SQL Server type connection, and this is a very strict configuration where we are defining the SQL Server version, the authentication mode, the credentials, along with the port and the the database details. So once this is done and the test connection has been done, the next part is we can go to the Metadata Command Centre and create the source over there. So here, since we have already created the connection as well as the runtime environment, we can start with the source. And here I'm creating a source as the Microsoft SQL Server type. Now the next part is the selection of the connection. So this is the connection that we just created in the administrator. And once the test connection is done, we can go to the configuration tab. Here I need to select the runtime environment. So here I am just doing the metadata extraction, data profiling, and relationship discovery. And uh, one thing we need to keep in mind is to select the process programmability objects. So we need to select this as yes. So if we select this as no, the resource will be able to scan only the tables and views only. So if we want all the other objects such as the stored procedures or the packages to be scanned as well, we need to keep this to yes. Apart from that, I have added the filters to scan certain schemas only rather than scanning the entire set of schemas on the database to make my extraction a little bit faster and only the relevant schemas to be extracted. So once this is done, you can save it and run the scanner. So once it is done, you will be able to see all the run in the monitor tab. You will see how the execution of each step and the status for each step. So once it's completed and the overall scanner run is completed, you will be able to get to the data governance and catalog tab and see the connection over there. So once that is established, this is the connection that we created. And under that, you can see all the objects, and along with the programmability objects that got scanned as part of this. And since I selected 4 schemas, these are the 4 schemas. I went to the human resources schema and selected the employees table from there. So here we can see the table and all the columns with the profiling information over there. So now once we get to the lineage tab here we can see under the dataset level, the employee table that we started with, employee table. Which is how it's flowing to the stored procedure. So under this, we can see the SPR2CST employee, the stored procedure that we created, which is the procedure instance. And under that, we see the statement and line 7.0, which essentially means when we created the procedure, the programmability component starts at line 7 only. So once this is there, we see that the output is employee CSTSP. So this is the flow we are seeing with the dark blue arrow. This is the dataset level lineage. And now if we try to jump to the data element level, we can see the how it's flowing in the attribute level. So we can see essentially the different attributes under the employee table, how they are coming up. So maybe let's select the birth date. Yeah, birth date. So here we can see how the birth date is flowing across from the employee table and in the stored procedure to employee CSTSP. So with a dark blue arrow, it gives a clear path of how it's flowing across the different stages. Now, particularly for the stored procedure here, if I go at statement 7.0, if I hover over there, I see the statement 7.0 hyperlink coming up. Now, if I click over this link, it will take me to the actual statement where it will we can see the actual code. So if this is the overview of this tab, and once I go to the code tab, I can actually see the complete actual stored procedure statement that is being there. Now we can jump to the SSIS. So as we are aware that on the CDGC world, the SSIS source provides 2 reader options. One is reading from SSIS DB directly, and another is using the DTSX flat file option. So first we'll start with the SSIS DB configuration. So this is definitely the recommended approach, and it is easy to maintain since once the SSIS DB is configured, it only runs to the scanner rerun is required only whenever you make any changes or new packages that gets deployed. So here to get started, I am on my Visual Studio project for integration project type. And here I have created a SSIS type project in which I have a source, which is nothing but my person table within a person schema. I have added derived column transformation to convert the first name and last name to the uppercase. and I have created a target, which is the person underscore SSIS DB underscore output table in the DView schema. So once this package is created, as we need to deploy this package so as to be available in the SSIS DB. So currently, since the package is current, and once I save it, it will get saved locally on my Visual Studio only. But I will need to deploy it so that it gets available on the SSIS DB, and it can be seen on the local Visual Studio server as under the source repos path. And in the repos path, you can select the project name you have created. So for me, it's like SSIS SSDB. So under this, there is a bin development. So under this, there is a file, iSpec file, and in the actual folder, you will see the DTSX file and the solution files created. So this is a DTSX file, which is the flat file for this. And once we deploy it, it will be available on DTS. So if I go to my SQL Server Studio, under the integration service catalogs, I see the SSIS DB, and under the there is a folder we have created, SSIS DB underscore TD. In that we have the project, and under that we have the package as SSIS underscore SSIS DB underscore TD DTSX. So now once the package is available in the SSIS DB, the next part is to create the source. So here, though I could have utilized the same source earlier, but I had to create another source. The reason is that for particularly SSIS, we need a Windows authentication, Windows authenticated user. So here I'm using Windows authenticated user. For the previous setup, I used a local SQL user, and that's the reason I created another connection here. So again, it is the same connection that we created earlier, nothing different. It's a SQL Server type connection only, and rest only the user is different. It's a Windows authenticated user. So now once this is done, we will go to the Metadata Command Center, and we have created one source, which is essentially the Microsoft SQL Server Integration Service type source, or the SSIS. Here we have selected the SSIS DB for this case, and the connection is MS SQL SSIS DB TT that we just saw that we created in the administrator. In the configuration, it's the same secure agent, the runtime environment that I created earlier. And this is all I have set up. I've not set any filters over here. So once we save this project and save this source and run it. So once we do that, you can go to the monitor tab and track this. And once the, as we saw in the previous SQL Server deployment as well. So once that is complete, the next part is to do the connection assignment for over here. So here you can see that I see my source available, that is SSIS as a TT, and this. So for this, I have done the connection to the source and target database. So essentially, I showed earlier that my source was the person schema, which is I have done here, and my target table was under the DView schema. That is what I have done here. So once this is complete, we can check again the status in the monitor tab, and once it is completed, then the next part is we can jump to the data governance and catalog web service. And once on this page, again, this is my database. Again, I'm checking for the schemas, the 4 schemas that I sent. And this is my person schema here. And then under this, I have opened the person table. So here it shows me all these, like all my attributes available over the columns along with their profiling status. And now I'll jump to the lineage tab. So here at the dataset level, I can see basically I'll just minimize the component that are not required here. So here I can see, like, from the person table, I have the data task flow, which is I can see this is a catalog source, SSIS type catalog source. Here it's the package, and again under this is the data flow. And from here, I'm seeing the data flowing from person to data task flow, which is further to the person SSIS DB output. Now we can switch to the data element level, essentially to check the attributes. So here, again, let me minimize this part. Yeah, so here we are still checking the SSIS DB only. So here, let me select, let's say business entity ID. And here we can see like from business entity ID flowing from the person table to the business entity ID, which is a calculation happening. And from here, I am actually going to the so here we are essentially going to the business entity ID, which is under the person SSIS DB output table, which was the output. Now let's check the second mode where the SSIS reader module is the file or the DTSX file. So in order to present this, I have created a simple mapping where my source is employee table within human resources that we saw earlier. And it is there's a target table where the that's employees underscore CST underscore SSIS in the DBU schema. So I'm just passing on the values from source table to the target table. That's a simple mapping I've created. And once I save this package, it is getting saved locally under the source repos, integration service project 1. And here I have the package.dtsx file. So this is the file that is getting saved locally on the server. So in order for me to set the reader module and have it accessible, I will need to place it on the secure agent server so that it can be accessed by the CDGC. So I'll copy this file and I have placed it on my local, like I've created a folder and I placed it locally here. So once it is placed, this is basically my local server, which is acting as the runtime module as well. So here we have created another connection, which is the Microsoft SQL Server Integration Services source type. And the SSIS reader module is files here. So since I've selected files, I have provided the path where the package.dtsx file was placed. And we go to the configuration again, runtime environment is my local machine, and it is the same server or the machine where the flat file has been placed, so that CDGC can read the file. So now once this has been done, again, the next part is to save the configuration and run it. So here, one thing we can do it, since I have not selected any filters, since I had only one DTSX file, but let's take, you have more than one DTSX files and you don't want to scan all of them. Maybe a few of them are entered, so you can use the filters and you can select only the files that are required as part of the scan, and then save it and run it. So once we save it and run it again in the, we can go to the monitor tab and check if the scan is completed. Below that, we have metadata extraction details that shows us the complete details of the calculations, packages, data elements, data sets, what have been extracted as part of this run. So once this is done, again, the next part we will need to do is to do the connection assignment. So here for this, since my source was a human resources schema, one is this assignment I have done, and another is the DBU schema. That is second assignment we have done. We can check the status here in the monitoring itself. And once this is completed, the next part is to jump over to the data governance and catalog. So here, again, my employee table was my source table, as we saw earlier. So here we can see it. And now simply let's jump to the lineage part. And I have kept the lineage hops as medium, as that satisfy my requirement for now. So here, since we already saw before that it's an employee table and it is getting the values from some of the previous calculations and previous stored procedures, but we are starting from the employee table itself. So that's where we are concerned as of now. So here from the employee table, we can see that it's going to the SSIS package with the catalog source. Under this, it's a package, and within this is the data task flow. And now from this, we can see that employees CST SSIS is the table that is getting the data as part of the SSIS. And once we get to the data element level from this, let me minimize this one. So here in this view, like let me select let's take job title. So here we can see like in the employee table, I've selected the job title attribute and how it's flowing as a within the like the SSIS. We can see as a calculation. And now employee CST SSIS, that was our target table. It's getting updated through as part of the SSIS package. Now let's quickly shift our gears from SSIS to SSRS. And in order to get started, I have opened the Visual Studio project with the reporting type. So here I have created a new report where my data source is the employees CST SSIS table, which was the output for our SSIS project basically. So here with this report, like I have deployed this report, and when I run this report, this is how the report output looks like. So the report can be seen or basically once it's saved, it will available under the again the source repos, the project that you create. I've created SSRS and a TT project. Under that, you will see the files getting saved as .rdl. So I have two reports saved here. And again, in the bin debug, you will also see those two files available. So other thing is for the configuration details, we will need to go to the report service configuration manager for SSRS. And here we can see the all the configuration details along with the web service URL. So this something needs to be noted down so that we can configure this in our Metadata Command Centre while creating the source. So once this is done, let's get to the Metadata Command Centre. So here we are creating a new source, which is something I've created SSRS under TT-web service. And here the source type is Microsoft SQL Server Reporting Services type. So here, like as you know, from the CDGC perspective, SSRS, there are two more reader modes available. One is the web service and another is the files. So first we will go with the web services as that's the preferred or the recommended way to go, because here as and whenever you generate the new reports or new reports get added or edited, you just need to run the scanner and the same gets updated within the CDGC as well. So once you select the service, you will see the further the further configuration items coming up. So in the URL, this is something we can get from our SSRS configuration manager. The only thing needs to be kept in mind is to add this component report service 2010.asmx, which is essential component for the web service URL, else the scan won't work. Other details are the domain, username, and password. Make sure that we are using the Windows authenticated user. Next is the runtime environment, which is the runtime environment we created earlier in the administrator, essentially the secure agent setup. Right. So once this is done, again, you can add the filter conditions in case you don't plan to scan all the reports and want to put a filter for certain reports. So once that is done, save the report and execute the report. So once that is done, you can go to the monitor tab and check for the execution. So here we can see the report got executed, it's completed, and here in the metadata extraction details, I can see all the fields, folders, projects, reports, how much they are executed. So now, once this is done, the next part is to do the connection assignment. So here, since I am reading the report which sits on one of the server or one of the other database. I'm doing a connection assignment here. So here for this particular one, AdventureWorks 2019, I'm doing an associated DBO, which was the schema for my source table, that was employees underscore CST underscore SSIS. So once the connection assignment is completed, this is done, we can again check the completion status and logs on the monitor tab itself. And once this is done, we can go to the data governance and catalog now. So here, since it's the same database, and I'm going to my source table, which is essentially the source table for this SSIS report we are talking about. So this is something we can see all the columns, column details, and the profiling details here. And let's quickly jump to the lineage. So here, let's firstly check at the dataset level. So here, since the the report, this particular table was getting populated as part of the SSIS, this is something we can see here. But here, since we are focusing on the SSRS, so let's see our SSRS TD web service, which is the catalog source. SSRS report TD is a project, and under that is a data set. So since, as we saw, that there were two reports that were present here. So one was the SSRS underscore report TT, and another was the employee underscore SSRS underscore TT. So the two reports got populated and below the data sets. And then, so this is the project. And yeah, so now let's jump to the data element level. So in this data element level, we are seeing the employee CST table, which is going to the data set and then to the SSRS report TT. So here we can see that it's the catalog source, data set, and then the fields. Similarly, this is the actual report for SSRS and the fields. So maybe let's take one of the field as job title. So here we can see how it's the job title is getting populated from SSIS first, and then how it's going to flowing to the SSRS report. So now let's check on the second part of SSRS source, where the SSRS reader module is the file. So here I will be using the same SSRS reports that we created earlier. And now the part that changes over here is that once we, as I've shown earlier, that we see that the files are getting generated under the RDL as RDL files under the project, and then in the bin debug we see the RDL files available as well. So once the files are available, and you can see that sitting, the next part is to download the SSRS exporter utility from Informatica. So this is something I have downloaded a utility on my D drive temp location, and it came with two files: SSRS JSON file, which is a configuration file, and the SSR exporter exe utility. So so this is how the SSRS JSON file looks like. So this is something I'm providing my Windows Authenticated username, password, the Windows domain, URL. Please make sure to add the report services 2010.asmx at the end of the URL. And then in the include filter, you can add the filters if you want to scan only a certain set of folders and not all the projects, and or just leave it blank like this. Just save this file. And once you save this file and execute it, it is a format we need to use: SSRS-exporter export -- JSON file, SSRS JSON. So once you execute this, you will see the log. And then once you go back to the same path, you will see the XML files getting generated. So since we had two reports at this path, there are two XML files corresponding to each report. So now the next part is, since I generated this file on the server where SSRS is hosted, my runtime environment cannot communicate or reach to this server. So I need to copy this file to a path where my secure agent or runtime environment can reach to. So I'll copy this path file and place it on my local. I put it on the C drive SSRS path. I've copied one of the XML file over here. So once this is copied, now we can go ahead with creating a source on the Metadata Command Center, and I've created a source with a source type as Microsoft SQL Server reporting service, like we created before. And now in the SSRS reader mode, I have selected files instead of web services. So since this is files, I don't see all those web services configuration items. And I have provided the source directory where the XML files are present. So this is a path where I'm reading the files. Now, going to the configuration, I'm using the runtime environment, which is again my server where the secure agent is hosted. And again, the filters, you can include the filters if you want to scan certain reports and certain XML files and not all of them. This is what, once you save it, run it, we go to the monitor tab, check the execution. So here we see, since we scanned the XML file and not the through the web service, we see not all the data is getting displayed here. But you will see the status and the logs. And once this is complete, the next part is again the connection assignment. So here I am again assigning it to the source dataset from where I get the source dataset, which is employee CST SSIS, and which was under my DBO schema. So once the connections done, I check the status as complete, and next is now I jump to my data governance and catalog. So it's the same essential source table employee CST SSIS. I go to the lineage tab, check the dataset level. Here I'm seeing here the SSRS TT is my catalog source for this one project in the dataset, and similarly this is the report. So now if I jump to the data element level, let me minimize this. So this is, we can see like let me select job title. So here we can see how the job title is flowing across from the source to the data set to the actual report. Now, let me a little bit go back to the data set level and maybe change it to maximum. So this is based on the complete demo starting from stored procedure we saw. This is the complete end-to-end view of from where we started, like how the employee table came up. There are a couple of procedures that came into picture. Then there was a SSIS package that we involved, and then which created the employee CST table, followed by uh, SSRS report. So this is a complete end-to-end lineage representing the SQL Server, stored procedure, and SSIS and SSRS. Thank you, everyone.
Hi all, we have reached the Q&A part. Please post your question. Srini and Puneet, we already have one question written.
Sure, Harshita, we are looking into that.
think the question is, let me ask here, from Sierra Carey, our reporting site is on HTTPS. How do we manage connecting to that with the certificates or SSL hurdles? I believe we can import the certs and so that we can use that URL, I believe. We can share specific instructions, Sierra, to your email. And there are references attached in this particular deck, which has IDMC security document. Metadata Command Centre configuration is very important, where you'll see it's regardless of the scanner, like any scanner, you will see the prerequisites, the services provided, and then all the requirements that you need to have before configuring it in the MCC application. There is another question from Hasso Shop. Will there be support for SSIS packages in Azure Data Factory later? I believe are you trying to migrate SSIS to Azure Data Factory? There is Azure Data Factory scanner available, and there is a separate text-based webinar that we have already provided for how to configure and extra in the Azure case study. You can take a look at that. This webinar is
for SSIS packages, there is a that is on the roadmap as well.
Thank you, Puneet. Yeah.
Any more questions? Right, we will end today's webinar. Thank you, Srini and Puneet, for presenting today's webinar, and we kindly request our audience to take up the survey and let us know your thoughts. Today's webinar recording will be available tomorrow on Success Portal under the Resources tab. You all have a great day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.